Hey, do you guys remember Free Radical? You know, the guys that made Timesplitters. Yeah, I kind of forgot about them myself, at least until I purchased my very first Xbox a while ago and picked up this weird little stealth action hybrid called Second Sight. I was pretty interested right off the bat, since this is one of the few Xbox titles I haven't seen the Dolly Popka rant and rave about over on his YouTube channel, Viridian Flashback. Which begs the question, can Second Sight live up to the hype of its first-person predecessors? Well, I'm Jared, and this is Avalanche Reviews.
Guess he won't be dating again.
And like he's ever getting out. He's a psycho killer.
Sweet, what'd he do?
That's classified.
Second Sight sees you waking up in medias res as a battered and bruised test subject in some government facility. You have absolutely no idea who you are, and even less of an idea why you were able to use telekinetic powers. After a few well-timed flashbacks, you find your name is John Vadek, and you used to be involved in a Marine task force as a civilian consultant.
Then why do you want me here?
We down.
From here on, it's a mad dash to escape the facility and discover what dark government nonsense has you able to lift things with your mind, and exactly what got you there in the first place. This is actually a really engaging story, and having the setting switch between modern-day telepath Vadek and his 6-month younger counterpart on a secret mission in Siberia kept the pace nice and solid. Around every corner is a cutscene or a flashback ready to fill you in on more of the story, and since this is actually a story that I'm interested in uncovering, that works out perfectly. If you guys enjoy a good government conspiracy tale with supernatural elements sprinkled on top, Second Sight is pretty much a safe bet. I'm sure most of you will see all the twists coming, but that doesn't take away from the story's charm, and as a mid-2000s tale of cover-ups and psychic powers, this game has charm coming out of its metaphorical ass.
Can you handle a sidearm?
They said my role was strictly advisory.
Then advise yourself to get some weapons training.
Make it stop!
At a time when stealth games were at their peak, Second Sight dared to be, well, a stealth game. That style was all the rage back in the mid-2000s, and Free Radical weren't about to miss that bandwagon. I guess it's just too bad the devs didn't consider the fact that they knew nothing about the genre before they dove in. Right off the bat, we have no visual indicators to show whether or not we can be seen, and that's because the stealth in Second Sight is based solely on cover. We have no enemy vision cones to go off of, and no shadows to sneak around in. That being said, this isn't the worst stealth system I've played, and once you finally get acclimated, you'll be sneaking around with the best of them. And if that sounds pretty vanilla to you, that's because it is, or at least it would be without the inclusion of psionic powers. As you progress through the game, Vadek unlocks his latent mental abilities, and these help a shit ton when sneaking around. Being able to turn invisible, shoot balls of energy, and project your consciousness all help make Second Sight's stealth way more acceptable, and even pretty fun in some parts. It's just too bad the third component of the gameplay sort of tanks the rest. Since this is a third-person console affair, the devs went with a cover-based auto lock-on style that was pretty common around this time, but sadly their experiences in first-person shooting didn't carry over. The general idea is that holding L locks onto a target and pressing the right stick switches between other possible targets. Now, this has been successfully tackled in the past, but Free Radical definitely weren't present in any of those projects. Since you have the ability to fine-tune your aiming with the same right stick that switches targets, you'll find yourself switching targets more often than getting headshots. I also had a huge amount of issues actually moving this little blue cursor around. Now, I'm willing to admit that this could be due to me playing with a knockoff no-name brand controller, but I didn't have access to an official one to test against, so if you guys have had a different experience, definitely let me know. As far as my cursor is concerned, it had way too big of a dead zone, and then was way too sensitive when you got out of that dead zone. This resulted in me having to finesse almost every single headshot I got, and always on a stationary target, which was never a consistent result, so I got to see this screen a lot more than I would have liked. The auto lock-on also had a mind of its own. If you're in a small corridor with only a few enemies to worry about, you'll be fine, but load that corridor with combustible items and small things that can be thrown with your telekinetic powers, and you have a recipe for frustration. Overall, Second Sight is a really fun game in the beginning, since you've yet to discover advanced psionic abilities and are required to take down fewer enemy guards. But once the difficulty ramps up, things take a turn for the annoying, and normally that'd be the end of the assessment for me. But there are also really interesting puzzles that require a keen mind to get past, and when the game lets itself slip into a flow, things can be really enjoyable. But in the end, this is a game that shows what happens when a dev jumps into a genre they just don't quite understand. For those not turned off, I will say I had fun with this one, but most of the time it was in spite of the gameplay, and not because of it.
Where's the Colonel hiding out?
Get lost!
What made you think you could get away with just shooting people? Let me help you.
Right as I booted Second Sight up, I was immediately reminded of the really cool style that the Timesplitters games were known for. That cartoony, stylized, big-headed look really sells this game. On one hand, you have some believably designed locations and environments, and on the other there are these extremely stylized character models with superb facial and body animations. For some reason, these conflicting elements just click, and the game pulls off this super interesting look. As a game made in the same engine as Timesplitters, it goes without saying the weapon models look nice and detailed, although you can really only tell while in first-person mode, but a lack of gun variety brings this aspect down a bit. Like I said before, environments here look really great, but the inclusion of breakable cover and small objects having some decent physics adds to the overall immersion and makes the odd gunfight feel really cinematic. While the environments were designed around the game's stealthy playstyle, sadly the camera was not. You can switch between two camera types with a press of the Y button, but neither really helps. In the cinematic-looking fixed perspective, stealth sections are a nightmare, as looking around corners doesn't show what's ahead. With no visual indicators of enemy placements or sight cones, this mode is flat out not recommended, which really sucks because it makes the game look so much cooler and more atmospheric. The second mode looks like a more traditional third-person camera and gives full control over to the player, but in this mode you'll spend most of your time wrestling with the camera. Since this mode is the best way to actually see your surroundings, you'll be using it the most, but its fidgety movements, small boundaries, and tendency to get caught on the environment means you'll constantly be adjusting and messing with it. This one problem nearly ruins the game's intended look and feel, and if you ask me, all it would take to fix would be adding a small radar on the screen when using the stationary camera mode. Now, I may sound a little ridiculous right now since it's pretty much expected to have crappy camera controls in old PS2 era 3D games, but Second Sight stretches my leniency for old games far past its breaking point. If you really like the look of the Timesplitters games, you'll definitely enjoy a more toned down version of that style applied to a more real world setting. But be warned, the game's camera will test your frustration much more than the actual game will.
And I know what's going on here.
Research and development, Dr. Vatic. Disciplined inquiry leading to practical results.
So it seems like for every nice thing I have to say about this game, a bad thing is sure to follow, but let's break down the pros and cons to see if this game should make it into your collection. This game takes what worked with the look of Timesplitters and runs with it. If this is a style you like, there really aren't too many other places to see it. The variety of psionic powers at your disposal means that both combat and stealth never have only one approach. Turning invisible to sneak by a guard or possessing him and making him kill all of his friends are both equally satisfying and makes for some really interesting puzzle solving. Who doesn't love a good government conspiracy story? And the added bonus of mental powers and a dash of Russian involvement make for some oddly poignant messages right now. See, I can do edgy political humor. The auto-aim system is borderline broken once you get to the more challenging parts of the game, which makes getting to the end far more frustrating than it needs to be. I spent a huge amount of my time in this playthrough fighting with a camera that just wanted me to die. Although a more traditional camera setup is selectable, I almost feel like they never intended for it to be used. You could definitely say that Second Sight is a mixed bag. It's obvious that Free Radical is a solid developer, but it's also obvious they had never worked on a stealth action game like this. The two biggest offenders really show that these guys were out of their wheelhouse here, but honestly, there's a lot of potential to see too. This is a textbook first attempt, and I can't help but feel like this could really take off as a series. Every problem in the game seems to have come from a lack of understanding, and I think a second crack at it would lead to an awesome experience. I actually had a lot of fun here and really enjoyed the story, but the big faults were always right around the corner. As for a recommendation, I'm sort of conflicted. A part of me wants to tell you to stay away, but another part wants you to experience the super fun first half of the game. I guess if you're a stealth game fan, the addition of psionic powers will make for an interesting romp. And if you're a fan of this era of gaming like me, you'll probably enjoy a trip back to your teenage years. So this one is going to be up to you guys. I'm a little too conflicted to say one thing on either side, but if you are a little interested, it rarely leaves the $5 to $10 price range of any of the consoles that it's released on. So that is a plus. And I think that's about all for me, guys, but I will be back soon. So as usual, I'm Jared.
I guess you've heard of me.
And this is Avalanche Reviews. Hey guys, thanks for sticking around for another video. If you like what I'm doing here, maybe hit that like button and share it around a bit. But if you really like what I'm doing, come check out my Patreon page and see how you can get involved in supporting more videos just like this one.